Ready, set, podcast! This is the Ready, Set Podcast, and here's your host, me, Joe Persinger.
Hey, how was your week, everyone? Welcome to the podcast. I am your host, the man, the legend, the myth, Joe Persinger. All right, so we've got one hell of a podcast this week. If you're sick and tired of all this Games of Thrones hype, well, you're in luck. This is a safe space, and you're not going to hear me mention that overhyped show. Here comes the hype, man! This podcast is so stacked, folks. We're loaded! Wish I had a joke for you. I don't. Okay, so let's get to it. Are you ready? Set, podcast. What a week, everyone. Democrats can't get their shit together. I'll get to that in just a second. A guy in an Easter Bunny outfit is going viral here in Orlando, and Disney is going to dominate the summer box office. The NFL draft is this week. Lots going on here. All right, let's get to our next segment here. Joe weighs in.
What time is it? It's time to weigh in.
All right, so we're going to catch up on some of the stories we've been following here on the podcast. One of them being the college scandal of 2019. We got Lori Loughlin's daughter and the shirt guy from Target apparently might be indicted with their parents. Oh, that's right. The shirt guy's her dad. Well, he's already indicted. Well, it's interesting because why would that information get out? Like, who benefits from letting everyone know that Lori Loughlin's daughter is being investigated by an office of the U.S. attorney? Because that was leaked by someone, and I can't imagine that coming from, the Target shirt guy's camp. But who? Joe who? Not Joe, did it, whatever. Who did this? Who would leak this information is the question. Well, let's break that down for a second. Who would that leak help? Not Lori's Fuller House. This was the feds sending a message. Say hello to my little friend. That was horrible. What? Oh, that's not Godfather? What did I just say? Yeah, that was Scarface. That's right. But it's Al fucking Chino. Ooh-ha! Ooh-ha! That was Al. Haven't you guys seen Scent of a Woman? We're all about promoting minorities here on the podcast. Well, looks like I got a message here from Ken saying that's Joe Persinger at Ready. Oh, never mind. Okay, moving on here. So we also have a Jon Titor. I still hate saying that name. Jon Titor update. Kind of was on the internet at work. And kind of ran across something here. Let me see if I can pull it up on my phone. Oh, geez, I was all set up to go here, and then I started fucking around on my phone, and now I'm just not prepared. Oh, where is it? Where is it? Here it is. Okay. So, I'm going to read this part from the article I found on strangerdimensions.com. Our Jon Titor podcast brushed over the time machine because, we were mostly focused on the overall hoax. But this small blurb I found kind of shed some light on what makes time travel possible. And no, it is not the flux capacitor. So here we go. This is, where the hell did it go? Okay, Jon Titor and the Kerr black hole. According to Jon Titor, his time machine used two microsingularities, which we did discuss, to distort the gravitational field around the time machine, enough to replicate the effects of a Kerr black hole. This I can't read for my life, ostensibly achieved the fantastical time-traveling abilities of a Tipler cylinder proposed by Frank Tipler in 1974. So if you listen to the podcast, those two things would definitely sound familiar because I did touch on both of those, that the time machine housed two micro-singularities and that it was also set up with these Tipler cylinders. And the Tipler cylinder is named after Frank Tipler, and I think I kind of touched on that again, but I'm not going to go into that. But this is more about the micro singularities, because that was kind of, when we were doing this podcast, really what stood out to me the most. So anyway, going back to the article. The microsingularities, said Titor, were manipulated by interjecting electrons onto their surface. So I guess what that's saying is these things were housed in that box, and then in order to make time travel possible, it would inject these electrons, and then I guess that's what would open up the black hole. Now, for those of you that don't know, a singularity is basically what a black hole is. You know, if you took our sun, condensed it down, you know, let's say you had a volleyball and you're able to condense that thing down to a really, really dense pool ball. You know, when you put that thing on, Albert Einstein's probably rolling in his grave as I try to explain physics here in the most simplest terms possible. But essentially, this cue ball, when it like our sun, when it sits in the space-time continuum, it kind of bends and stretches space. But a singularity is so dense it can't be held, so it just pulls the gravitational field down and just sucks in all the light. And again, so I'm sure there's some physicists rolling in their grave or their eyes as they listen to this, if they even are. So anyway, that's basically what a singularity is. So this is a microsingularity. So this is obviously a technology that does not exist. I mean, how would you keep a microsingularity stable on a planet? Anyway, going into the weeds here, and we're going to get out of that. Going back to the article. Now, while I'm fuzzy on the science involved in manipulating black holes, haha, as am I, it was theorized by Kip Thorne in the 1980s that you could control, i.e. hold open, a black hole's wormhole by using some kind of quote-unquote negative energy. So in the grand scheme of theoretical gobbledygook, it sounds okay. Yeah, I mean, if it's an internet hoax, it'll pass the test. In the end, Jon Titor's microsingularities not only took him through time, they took him into another universe entirely, what he called a world line. So this is where they were claiming, I think we kind of talked about this at the end, that, you know, no matter where he goes, how he time travels, he's not creating paradoxes. That's kind of what this paragraph is trying to say. And also, as we discussed, that also how they were able to kind of, you know, brush off anyone that starts asking questions about those. And this kind of goes into this, so let's go back to it. As the story goes, because it was another universe altogether, any and all temporal paradoxes were cleanly avoided. That's the one possibility of venturing through a Kerr black hole. I'm shaking my head right now. So if the universe did allow for time travel, I actually do think it would end up much like Titor described it, using black holes and avoiding paradox through the existence of many worlds. A Kerr black hole or something similar then seems like a likely candidate for the world's first time machine. Oy. Yeah, so there's just nothing but crap right there, and that's just probably written just for the fun of it. What the hell has happened here? So, yeah, I mean, I just thought that was interesting, that how these microsingularities make time travel possible. So does that mean the flux capacitor was some kind of microsingularity? I don't think Back to the Future ever really touched on what exactly the flux capacitor was. But really, in attempting to explain time travel to simpletons like myself, it's probably best that you don't. Okay, so there's another thing I kind of wanted to get into, and that's the fucking Democrats. These people cannot get their shit together. Nancy Pelosi, the Speaker of the House, our next Tuesday special, can't rein in the progressive wing. I mean, Ben Shapiro was right. All the Democrats have to do is just not act crazy. And then they can dab, shimmy, jitterbug, and stomp their way into the executive branch in 2020. But they can't help themselves. Pelosi is like me when I was 13 at my grandma's cafe on a lunch break. Eyes are bigger than her stomach. You're halfway through that 72-ounce steak, Nancy, and it looks like it's eating you, breaking off way more than you can choose or chew. And I'll be honest, the Democrats are lucky. Having the media in their back pocket basically gives them home field advantage. They are that offensive coordinator in the NFL who just runs screen after screen after screen. It's 3rd and 23. Screen! They run so many screens, there's literally a racist running the state of Virginia, and you've probably totally forgotten about it. Because, screen! Or what about the fact that the lieutenant governor is assaulting women? You probably forgot about that too. Screen! I mean, the media, although they can run these protections, these look over here, don't look over there. it's a double-edged sword. Because, yeah, it's helping these guys in Virginia stay in power. But, like the Democrat Party itself, each faction has a different, point of view on what they want to happen. And the same thing goes for the media. There are different wings of the media that want impeachment. You still have wings of the elite media denying the Mueller report, which they said had so much credibility. I mean, these people are basically collusion truthers, clinging to their obstruction of justice dreams, and they are crying for impeachment. And what's really, really comical to me is these are the same people that used to shit on Donald Trump for his birther collusion, for his birther whole thing about Obama not having a birth certificate, and he caught so much crap for that. And I just find it funny that these are the same people that are basically hanging on to collusion like Trump held on to the fact that Obama never had a birth certificate from America. But damn it, Joe, I promised the people I'd stray from politics this week, but I just can't help myself with all this fucking nonsense. Democrat leaders don't want impeachment. The media and the progressive wing does. And as my therapist used to say when I was young, this is a problem. So turning to the 2020 campaign here, I'll just say this. Joe Biden, if he gets out alive, is not going to beat Trump. You think people in Michigan were skeptical of Clinton aren't going to have reservations with this creepo Obama stooge? Give me a break. Kamala Harris, who sounds like she used to work for a 1-900 number company, which anyone under 25 won't even know what the hell I'm talking about, says felons in jail should have the right to vote. That we should consider this discussion, or some bullshit political logic say speak, which the next day she turned around and backpedaled that position. Jesus. I'm telling you, every year that goes by, California looks more and more like a leftist European socialist state. And then you got Bernie saying the Boston Bombers should have the right to vote. What? Huh? Who? This is just beyond nuts. Democrat candidates and leaderships are either slow and stupid or figuring out that the only way to get people to vote for them is to expand the electorate to wards of the state, like prisoners, and then to third-party wards of individual states. And by that, I mean kids of the age of 16 living with their parents. Well, let's be honest. A lot of those 16-year-old kids are probably still living with their parents that were 16, 20 years ago. So what is this? Let's be honest here. Bernie and Pelosi are just old farts. And they're not the only ones. Which leads me to my next point here. We're just driving down the road about 1/10 of a mile ahead of the train, and we're about to cross that motherfucker. Why? Because it's an alpha fucking move. That's why. So Marshall Frank, who wrote an op-ed in USA Today, actually did this thing about discussing term limits on the basis of age. So I'm just going to jump right into that here as soon as it loads. Okay. So here we go. This is Marshall Frank. I'm turning 80 this month. I don't care if I were the smartest politician in government and or could still climb mountains. I would have no business being president of the United States, a Supreme Court justice, or a member of Congress at this age. I feel in good shape, but I definitely have far less physical and mental stamina than I had 10 or 20 years ago. No matter how I try to fake it, while there may be exceptions, that's the norm. I'm going to jump ahead to the fourth paragraph here. In the past, we've had politicians who had no business occupying a seat in the Senate or the House. The most egregious example was Senator Strom Thurmond, Republican of South Carolina, who served 47 years until 2003, the year he died at 100. Wow, 100 years old. This guy spent half of his life in Congress. I'm not reading off from the article right now. That's just my personal opinion. He was so frail and under sedation, he needed assistance standing up from his chair. Jesus Christ. I mean, you can't even stand up by yourself and you're going to run for Congress? Good God. This is what happened to the Soviet Union in the 90s. That all these guys that were fucking old and shit, they just wanted to hang on to power. I mean, you kind of see that here with establishment politicians. Anyway, moving on here. I salute all octogenarians who continue to serve their country, but there must be a point when it's time for fresh blood, fresh ideas, and vigor. Do we want our highest court judges and congressional representatives making the most crucial decisions when they are far past their prime? Particularly disturbing is how much time members of the House must devote towards running their next election because they run every 2 years. Not much time is left for serving people. On the Supreme Court, stepping down can be a political issue. Justice Thurgood Marshall, whose capacity to serve on the court was questioned by the end of his career, worried about stepping down while a Republican was in office. Chief Justice William Rehnquist suffered from thyroid cancer his last year, missing numerous oral arguments before dying in office. These justices relied on law clerks to review cases and write opinions. Today, Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg is 86 years old and frail. So she's basically like Chief Justice William Rehnquist and any other Soviet Union bureaucrat just hanging on to power because they don't want a Republican to replace their seat. And, before I jump back in this article here, this is kind of where I get an issue with people in power who have been in power for so long. I don't know when she was appointed, but she's got to be on the bench for at least 20 years. Point being, you're not doing your country any justice by basically being old and frail and sitting on the bench on a death watch by Republicans because you don't want to give up your seat and have it become Republican controlled. I mean, really, by her acting this way is only reinforcing the point that I'm ultimately trying to make here. He continues in the article. Common sense dictates we need term limits for all the highest level representatives in government, with a cutoff at age 80 for the Supreme Court justices. That's not being cruel, that's being sensible. And presidential elections should require candidates to be under the age of 80 during their term. Now, I actually don't have an issue with this because they do the same thing in the Army. You can't join the National Guard Army past the age of 35. I think it used to be 40. They knocked it down. And they even mean that by you have to be out of AIT, that's advanced training, before you turn 35. Maybe it was basic. Whatever. It doesn't matter. Either way, it's a very similar, I want to call it, I guess an age limit would be the right way to go about it. So he finishes his article off with a very interesting quote here, and I'm going to read it. Let's see if we can take a guess who made this quote. In 1983, an assistant to the White House counsel under President Ronald Reagan wrote a memo. Setting a term of, say, 15 years would ensure that federal judges would not lose all touch with reality through decades of ivory tower existence. It would also provide a more regular and greater degree of turnover among the judges. Does anyone want to take a guess at who the author of this memo was? I'll wait. That would be John G. Roberts, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. And Marshall Frank finishes it off with one sentence that says it all. I wonder whether Roberts still holds the same view today. That's kind of interesting. Okay, enough with the politics. Let's get to what I'm excited about this week. The staff reports.
In my hands, I hold
The staff report.
All right, so this week we're going to talk about a favorite TV show of mine that just aired on YouTube Premium. It's in its second season, and it started last year, about May something. And that would be called Cobra Kai. Again, it's a YouTube original, YouTube Premium, and that was actually also known as YouTube Red. I had to look that one up because I was a little confused there. So you have both Seasons 1 and Season 2 are streaming now on YouTube. The first 2 episodes of the Season 1 is available for free, and I think Episode 1 of Season 2 is also available for free if you want to check that out on YouTube. So this is, if you recognize Cobra Kai but don't exactly know what it is, this is actually a spin-off TV show of the Karate Kid trilogy, the first 3. And that's something I used to watch when I was a little kid. Back in the 80s on a weekend night at my grandparents' house out in the suburb of Chicago. I remember watching that movie, thinking how awesome karate was. I mean, I think that was my first really time I was exposed to anything like that. And I wanted to be Daniel LaRusso. I used to practice karate, even though I had no clue what I was doing. I even remember going to bed that night thinking of the wax on, wax off routine and thinking how brilliant it was. And I do believe by the time I got to 5th grade, which was a few years later, I ended up taking karate, and it really wasn't. The movie glorifies it a little bit. We'll just put it that way. So even throughout the years, watching it on TV, thinking, Johnny Lawrence is a jerk, I always watched it. Eventually, I saw the second one a handful of times. Wasn't that memorable. That's when they go out to Okinawa. You could again. The movie is it was basically a commercial cookie cutter Hollywood movie. Once they saw the first one work, they're like, all right, let's just do the same thing with the second. Except we'll just have them go to Okinawa. It'll be more of a backstory for Mr. Miyagi. But you still had the dickhead guy that was around Daniel's age, terrorizing people. Creating hostility towards him through the audience, and then your antagonist, protagonist, and how they did the first one. You ended up with the crane kick. I can't remember what they fucking called it, the second one, but it was some kind of, instead of giving Daniel an offensive move to kick this guy's ass, because if you've seen it, he was fighting to the death. They give him this, like, I don't know. Again, it's been so long since I've seen it, but it was something with one of those drum, the tom-tom. I don't know what it's called. But it's a drum where you just move it with your wrist back and forth, and the two little strings of the ball, it hits it, makes a sound. And there was some kind of metaphor with the defensive move, blah, blah, blah. I'm so far into the weeds now, it's not even funny. So, yeah, anyway, the second one was all right. And, again, not that memorable. I think it probably got crushed critically. But the third one came out in 93. Now, I was actually old enough to go see that in the theater with my grandparents. I want to say maybe a few of my cousins came with, too. That was back when we all were somewhat at an age where we can all go out with our grandparents. I was a kid. I think I was about 11 years old. Back then, I thought Wayne's World 2 was a good movie, so I was happy with the third one. However, I'm not watching it on TV these days unless I have to. Which brings me to last year. Quietly, on YouTube Originals, a new series premiered called Cobra Kai. And this was created by Josh Held, who directed the last episode of the second season, and probably a handful of the first season, John Horowitz and Hayden Schlossberg. Now, if you don't know who these guys are, they are the same guys that wrote Harold and Kumar, the Hot Tub Time Machine movies. So when I heard that, I was like, okay, I think this is going to be all right. Now, they believed in the alternative theory of the original Karate Kid. So for those that haven't heard that, that is basically the theory where Ralph Macchio is actually the bad guy of the movie and Johnny Lawrence is the good guy. And that's laid out as, I think How I Met Your Mother actually touched on this with Barney Stinson. I know William Zabka and Ralph Macchio did a few episodes for How I Met Your Mother, kind of touching on this. And basically what was going on is they were saying Johnny was a good guy. He had the girlfriend, the karate dojo, the student, he's the former champion. And in walks this guy into his life and steals his girlfriend, basically starts picking on. So they kind of touch on this too, but like they kind of says, yeah, they bullied him because he was talking to his girlfriend. He tried to get involved, so he beat him up. That was a scene at the beach. And then he says, I don't hear from him for a few months. And that would be where he goes to his Halloween party as the shower, and then hoses Johnny down while he's rolling a joint. So the whole point of this theory was that Johnny was actually the good guy all along. He just got kind of screwed over by Daniel. But obviously, the way the movie portrays it, it makes Ralph Macchio look like the good guy. Again, always showing you that perception is the reality. So that's kind of what these three guys who created Cobra Kai did, is they wanted to take that alternate theory and then make a show out of it. So being such fans, they wanted to carry the torch, so they approached Ralph Macchio and Billy Zabka about this and created the series. I guess Macchio and Zabka really wanted to hear them out because they had been pitched before about this, and they really liked the ideas that these three guys pitched them, so they decided to go with it. And I guess they went from network to network, and a lot of them were just not really. I don't know. They just obviously didn't see any potential for this series, which I find that was misguided. So like I said, the first 2 episodes are available on YouTube for free, and I really highly recommend you check them out. But I want to talk about the writing, a few characters, and some of the overall themes from the first season. This isn't going to go very long because I don't want to accidentally ruin anything for anyone. I'm currently watching the second season, but we're going to get to that a little later. Hold on, I need something to drink. Okay. So the way these guys wrote this series out is brilliant. Like the theory proposed, they took the whole premise of Karate Kid and flipped it on its head, and in a brilliant way, I might add. So now you have Johnny Lawrence's character is given more depth and is now the new underdog. So the first season opens. God damn you, fucking iPad! It's free. I shouldn't complain, but whatever. So the season opens basically where the first movie ended. And they actually were able to. They said they went into the archives of the old film reels and found a new shot of Johnny Lawrence getting kicked. There was a close-up kick of him to the face, so they used that. And what was so brilliant about it is they show him just lying face first on the mat. It zooms out, says Cobra Kai, and then when it fades out and into the next scene, it's literally Johnny Lawrence, or William Zabka in this case, laying on his bed with Cheetos, beer, all that stuff. So you can kind of see all this time has passed. It was really cool how they did that. So Daniel LaRusso walks the line of good guy gone bad, gone good, but with a what's this bro's angle kind of way. I'm rooting for Johnny, and I actually catch myself actively against LaRusso, Danny LaRusso. I almost called him Tony LaRusso. And the old protagonist, but sometimes when they do flashbacks to the movie, you just can't help but to do a fist pump. So the first episode is actually interesting because they kind of just use the first two episodes to show you what's happened to Johnny since he took that kick to the face. And the second episode is kind of like, look how great Daniel LaRusso's life is. And you can see that's juxtaposed against how Johnny's life has kind of gone south. They don't really say how or why, but you can just assume that that moment in his life was a big turning point towards the negative. And it's just really cool how they do it. Like, you just literally find yourself, the way you rooted for Daniel LaRusso in the first season, Jesus Christ, the first movie is the way you find yourself rooting for Johnny now. So I just love how they flip that on its head. And then they do a really great job of introducing this new cast of characters, this younger generation, if you will. Miguel, the new Karate Kid, he's really awesome. And the way they build these characters up through the first 5 or 6 episodes is really awesome. There's also a guy, actually, I'm not even going to bring that up. Just if you ever watch it, look out for Eli Moskowitz. That's another underdog character in this movie that I really like. Throughout the whole 10 episodes, there's peppered references to some of the old gags in the movie, and it's brilliant. There's one I want to bring up, but I don't want to ruin it because it's in the last episode, and it's fucking hilarious. But you see numerous wax on, wax off references. What's really cool too is sometimes in the show they'll have they'll show a dojo, and they'll kind of flash back to Miyagi and Danny LaRusso's. It's really cool. Again, I'm probably giving away a lot here, and I really am trying not to do that. Balance. That's going to be the ongoing theme throughout the series. This season tends to focus on Johnny gaining and holding on to balance, even with life showing no mercy. And LaRusso is on the other side of the spectrum, attempting to maintain what he has built, but finds it's not an easy task with his rival back in his life. So, like, for instance, you kind of... What they kind of do through the first season is, they show Johnny, he's down in the rut, and then he kind of figures out, okay, I'm gonna take this right path, to get me out of this rut. And then every time life shows him no mercy and smacks him in the face, and he's got to kind of start all over again. That's as vague as I can get. The second season will expand on this theme, but we'll get to that in another episode. Now, without giving a lot away here, the overall arc to the story is balance and redemption. Johnny is the bad guy gone good. Daniel LaRusso is a family man, now being taunted by his rival and past. The storyline tackles bullying, father-son relations, political correctness, and of course, has some badass karate. And then there's the whole, I think what really drives this whole thing is will Daniel and Johnny fight again? I mean, I almost believe that's what drives the whole thing, is you want to watch them just go at it again. And they do a good job of kind of sucking you in that way. So like I said, I don't want to kind of just get too much more into this. We can kind of break down episodes in the near future. I have one friend who loves to watch this show. Maybe we'll be able to chat about it one day on the podcast. So check it out on YouTube Original, YouTube Premium, which was previously... I totally botched that. Okay, so it's a YouTube Original on YouTube Premium, and that was previously known as YouTube Red. Both Season 1 and Season 2 are streaming now, so go check it out. All right, that's this week's staff report.
We're trying to get a feel for how people spend their day.
The staff reports.
Anyone else see this Easter Bunny go viral on Facebook this week? I guess last week in Easter there was some kind of brawl that broke out in downtown Orlando, and there was a guy in an Easter Bunny outfit, and he started beating the crap out of this guy. I don't know, it's kind of interesting. And everyone's like, oh, Florida, there's stuff that happens in Florida, right? Yeah, that's quite the unfortunate event. Meanwhile, in Chicago, you have a state prosecutor basically letting some guy get off like nothing happened. Yet we're worried about a bunny kicking someone's ass. Anyway, let's talk about people in their ivory towers. Lawmakers, there's something else. Here we have a piece of the Article 1 section of our Constitution creating and passing laws that directly affect everyday Americans. And these people are so far inside this bubble, I'm expected to believe they have my best interest at heart. What about the mocha caramel-skinned House representative out of the Bronx? The way the media fawns or shits on her, you'd think she just won a Senate seat by the margin of 100,000 people. All right, let's stay in one lane, Joe. Bring it back now. We're getting into that irk and jerk. All right, but I want to dial this back from politics. So we've established here that persons making decisions from a centralized power situation, well, Joe's not a big fan of this. And this is a true form of, this is true from a centralized government standpoint, all the way down to local government and to city council persons and its government. Difference being your local government is more accessible. But that's not the point, and I digress. Well, kind of, hold on. I guess what I'm really saying here is, from, a government in Washington, D.C. to a local town government of 200 people, you still have people making these decisions from an ivory tower. It might not just be as grand as the Capitol Hill versus, Stuart, Florida, which is probably actually a bigger town than I'm making it out to seem, but... Point being is, you have city council people that are in a form of an ivory tower, but the difference between them and some fucktard in Washington is that local government is way more accessible. But I digress. So let's talk about the middle of this issue, but on the private sector of things. More specifically, overmanaged corporations. What annoys the fuck out of me about these, okay, let's be honest, I'm targeting you, restaurant industry, again. But these businesses... in the beginning are fine, but as they grow, as they become more bloated administratively, layers create isolation from the reality of how the restaurant actually works. What the hell are you getting at, Joe? Okay, here's what I'm talking about. If you've ever had a server job at a mid to large company, you probably received a textbook-looking thing called the Server Training Book. Have you ever read one of these things and think, who writes this thing? When was the last time they served a table? But you're college educated or credentialed, as we have discussed here in the podcast, which absolutely means nothing. Oh, I gotta adjust something up here. Okay. So here's someone working in their bubble called their office, their home office, creating rules for a situation they don't work in a day-to-day situation anymore. Wouldn't your job be easier if you were just working in the field instead of your ivory tower? I'm just going to back up here for a second. You ever read one of these server books before and just think to yourself, who the fuck is writing this thing? I mean, I remember reading one, and it was just basically trying to break down why you should sell appetizers and dessert. And I think the whole argument was, they showed a graph of, a check total without appetizers and desserts. And they showed one with it and used the logic of, hey, you take that difference, multiply it by 7, you buy a week, buy a month, buy a year, and here's the difference of your income by by getting people to buy appetizers and desserts versus not. Which, again, it's a logical argument, but not everybody wants to spend that kind of money. You know what I mean? Again, the person who's writing this, either it's been 20 years since they served a table or they think they know how it works. So, moving on here. What's even sadder is when this person is acutely aware that they should be working 1 to 2 days a week in this restaurant, but choose not to because the traffic is bad. Okay, you caught me. Here's what's going on. So, I worked with someone recently who, basically was... the fastest way to explain it would be this person is basically in charge of training. And this is a pretty small company still. So she works from home and basically is the one that makes these rules, or at least has the right to get them, to make them, and then okayed by her boss, which I believe is our operating officer. And she was working this week and was just kind of giving me the skinny on, what was going down and all that stuff. And it just kind of slowly came out that she doesn't work at the head office I won't say because I don't want to give up where I work. But she works from home, which is actually an hour from where I live. And she basically kind of suggested that, I probably should work at this store once or twice a week, but I don't because I don't want to deal with the traffic. And in her defense, I kind of understand that. But if you're going to make all these fucking rules that some people need to follow, don't you think it would be a good idea if you followed them yourself, not just every once in a while when you work in a store? I just find that shit so... It's just beyond maddening. You're making rules from an ivory tower that you want to dictate to other people, which, you can, lead by example when you go into these stores, but you don't have to do this on a day-to-day basis. You don't do this every day. You don't truly know what it's like to have to scrub out whatever, whenever. Again, I don't want to get too fucking specific here. And I don't know. There's a whole litany of arguments I have with this, and it's just, in general, I just don't like people making rules from afar in a centralized, powered situation, if you will, and then walk into a place, enforce these rules when you don't even do it every day. There's just something madly wrong with that. Okay, that's going to do it for us this week. Don't forget to check us out on Mixcloud, SoundCloud, or Spreaker. That is Spreaker. And YouTube. Please click the bell and subscribe. And don't forget to check us out on Twitter. That's Ready Set PODCST. And soon we're going to put up a Facebook page so have more direct access to everyone. And that way you guys can also see what is going on. So thanks for listening. Check us out next week. We'll have my best friend and drone enthusiast and DBZ expert, Ken Carangello. Hope you join us next week. See you later, you fucks. Thanks for listening to the Ready Set Podcast. Check us out next week, and don't forget to follow us on Twitter and look for us on our YouTube channel, Ready Set Podcast.